Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is David Lebetique. I'm Deputy Executive Director, Stakeholder Engagement at the Port of Los Angeles, and it's my privilege to moderate today's panel, an insightful discussion on trade and logistics, the beating heart of LA's and the global economy. Los Angeles is by all measures a powerhouse in international trade and logistics. About 2 weeks ago, the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation released a study underscoring the significance of the trade and logistics sector. $500 billion in economic activity, 13% of regional GDP, and supports 2 million jobs, some of the highest paying jobs in the region. Over the next hour, our goal is to unpack everything behind these numbers, and we will rely on the expertise of our distinguished panel. They will be sharing their insights on how Los Angeles is maintaining global competitiveness and the central role it plays in international commerce. This won't be a one-way conversation. Your perspectives and questions are invaluable to this discussion, so please begin formulating your questions now, and we will get to them during the Q&A. But first, let's get to our panelists. Starting at the end, I'd like to introduce Ron Frierson. Ron is Director of Economic Development for the U.S. West region at Amazon. Having served as the Director of Economic Policy for LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, served on the boards of Global LA, and chair of the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation, he has a deep understanding of the LA region and its place in the global economy. Welcome, Ron. Sitting next to Ron is Fran Inman, Senior Vice President for Majestic Realty. Fran is a nationally recognized expert in the intricate world of supply chain, freight, and goods movement. Her expertise has earned her appointments to bodies such as the California Transportation Commission and the National Freight Advisory Committee. However, I suspect she's most fond of the title we all readily use, the one and only Queen of Freight. Fran, welcome. Dr. Noel Hasagawa is Chief Operating Officer at the Port of Long Beach, where he oversees a wide range of critical functions. His exceptional contributions to our trade community were recently recognized with the prestigious Stanley T. Olafson Award from the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, the highest honor bestowed by our peers. Congratulations and welcome, Noel. And Lupe Valdez, Senior Director of Public Affairs at Union Pacific Railroad. Lupe brings a wealth of experience from her distinguished career, which includes impactful tenures at Metrolink, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and LA Metro. Adding to her impressive list of achievements, Lupe was recently awarded the 2025 Peter Drucker Award for Excellence in Supply Chain and Logistics Management. Welcome, Lupe. So let's jump right in. This question is for all of you. From each of your unique vantage points, what makes trade and logistics the beating heart of LA's economy? And what are the durable advantages of the LA region? Ron, let's start with you.
First off, you guys are the smartest people at Select LA because you selected this breakout session. Okay? So you're going to be the most equipped to move forward, and so congratulations to all of you.
And we're cool and fun.
Yes, and this is the cool kid crowd. This is a great question because I represent the Western United States for Amazon Economic Development, and my portfolio touches all of our business lines, and I'm sure all of you guys know that Amazon is essentially a federation of a lot of different businesses, whether it's the device business with Ring or Kindle or the logistics network. Thank you all for being customers, by the way, and I'm certain you are. And even when it comes to film production, so we have a lot of business lines. All of our business lines have a touch point here in California and in Southern California. So that tells you how important it is. Now, in regards to trades and logistics, that's something that speaks in and of itself. I tend to look at it a little differently. I look at it as though if trade and logistics needed to find a place, and they needed to find in site selection was what we call it, an area, okay, where should we be on the map, given everything that's going on around the globe, consumer behavior, access to markets, Los Angeles is the place to be. It's a very unique place. It's a very diverse place. I was mentioning in the phone call earlier that the diaspora of the globe has some sort of touch point here in this city. We have two of everything, 2 basketball teams, 2 baseball teams, you know, soccer. We have a rugby and cricket teams here. So that means whatever you're into, Los Angeles has a role for that. So with that comes demand, consumer demand. And not only that, if we look at our country, all 50 states within our country, and I have a purview where I do business everywhere from Alaska to Hawaii, Arizona, throughout the Western U.S. And if our country was a house, you all purchase homes, and you buy the house is empty. When you start to move your things into the house, you go through this one door. Los Angeles tends to be that door, okay? So this is the door that so many people from outside come in to access what we are as America. And it's such a rich place, rich history, it's so unique. And that's one of the reasons why I think that this is a trade and logistics hub. It's more so because of what's already here that kind of drove this industry here as opposed to the other way around.
Fran?
Okay, wow. I would say, so Fran and Majestic Realty were commercial real estate developers. So our part of this system of systems that I like to talk about is the commercial real estate side, so the industrial developers. And we're a company privately held, born here, and our focus had been the industrial sector when our founder, Ed Roski Sr., started way back 80 years ago. It was industrial, and in those days an industrial building maybe be 35,000 square feet, was a huge building. And so I would say that we happened to be born in just the right place at the right time, and that ties to the changes in how you move goods and the containerization. And I'm going to give a shout out to the LA Chamber, past board chair here. I'm proud that the early leaders of the chamber way back when knew that Los Angeles needed a seaport. And so they were wise enough to recognize that we had just all the right things for a natural seaport. And then along came the containerization and also just the wonderful growth of Los Angeles. So we have a huge population base, and as Ron said, you know, if you're going to do something, you've got to come through our gateway. And so I think if you look at the consumer demand, the fact that we had the beginnings of the infrastructure, we have continued that. We can certainly do more. We have great connectivity with 2 Class 1 railroads. In our business, one of the things we always look for is we love Union Pacific, but we love when they also have their competitors be in, because we're all better when we're on our best game. So I think for us, the sector really, we happen to be born here, and just the tremendous potential, and we leaned in, and I can tell you now, a big building is, you know, probably 2 million square feet in some of our fulfillment centers when it comes to the industrials. So I'll show more later about the journey of how we figured out that we were part of a bigger ecosystem. And I think for me personally, one of the things I really love is the fact that it's dynamic, it's ever changing, and all of these pieces need to be working. And when it's not so fun. But Anyway, I think it's just being in the right location, looking at where the demand, where you're going to have the infrastructure, where you're going to have the critical mass of partnerships.
Thank you, Fran. And Ron, I love your analogy about the house. So if we are a house, and Fran, you are kind of the garage.
I'm in a
Porch.
damn good garage.
It's a nice garage.
It's a really nice garage with a lot of capacity. The two ports really represent the front door. So Noel, what makes us the beating heart?
Well, first of all, the heart continues to beat, notwithstanding everything you're hearing, right? It's not beating as fast as it normally does, but it's still beating. And it's important for the LA region for that heart to continue to beat. But honored to be here with all of you, including with the Queen of Freight. It's not often I get that honor. But just to continue on what Fran and Ron were talking about, to give you all the bigger picture, because it's very easy for us to fall into our silos and just think about whether it's the front door or the garage. But as you've heard already, it's a system of systems. And when you recognize the enormity of how each of us contribute to this end-to-end supply chain, that's what really gives you a picture and a glimpse of how powerful of an economic engine this is. Goods movement is literally the economy in motion. When those containers arrive at the port, they cross the docks on a train or on a truck, and they make their voyage to the interior United States. It's generating jobs throughout its voyage. It's requiring companies to invest in real estate. It's supporting the supply chains of massive companies like Amazon. And the net result is, as David pointed out earlier, LADC just released a couple of weeks ago their latest report, Goods on the Move. There are 900,000 direct jobs just in this region, over 2 million across the nation. And this is why it's so vital that all of us recognize the importance of goods movement, how the different segments come together to transport that container from end to end, because it's that economic development, it's that vibrancy in the economies that it generates. As a port, as a front door, our job is to make sure that those ships come and they leave as quickly as possible. Our job is to make sure that our port terminals are not garages. The garages are in Fran's domain. Those containers shouldn't spend more than 3 or 4 days there. They should get off the ship, move through the docks. And that's what ports like the Port of LA and Port of Long Beach have been endeavoring to do since the supply chain crisis. Now, I will say this as well, for most of our history, ports were invisible. No one really talked about ports, no one cared about ports. But the supply chain crisis changed that for all of us. Now, supply chain, goods movement, and ports are part of everyday conversations. When you go to the store and you see a bear shop, what do they say? It must be stuck on the port. It must be stuck in the port. It must be stuck on a ship, never on a train. And so that relevance to everyday communities and people is what's changing the conversation about supply chain. So for that reason, couldn't be happier to be here on this All-Star panel on the 10th anniversary of Select LA, because goods movement and trade truly is a major industry cluster that has not only brought LA to this point, but it's going to continue to elevate and catapult the Los Angeles region economy to newer heights in the future.
Very well said. And the ports of LA and Long Beach, certainly great ports for LA, but what makes us a great port for the nation is what Lupe does. Lupe, the beating heart.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Lupe Valdez. I'm with Union Pacific Railroad, and we live in an interesting world these days. For those of you that, I normally don't mix church and state, but I have to tell you this because world news is world news. We just elected our first American Pope. That's wild to me. I mean, that's a real interesting phenomenon that no one expected to see. Again, no matter what religion you are, because it is an interfaith community, but I just mentioned that because that's the world we live in. That is the world we live in Southern California, with the diversity and with the number of things that we have. I work for a company that's 160 years old. I have never worked for a company that's 160 years old, but it has also changed over the course of time to obviously not only move our military, but also to move our customers. I have a ribbon of warehousing that travels all over the place and is always supposed to be moving at all times. And the infrastructure that we have here in Southern California is immense compared to other places where I don't have that type of infrastructure. Chicago probably will be one of those where I'd have 7 Class 1 railroads going into Chicago that I don't have here. But here we just have both the domestic ability of traveling down the I-5 corridor or going internationally from the ports. And remember, I also have 6 gateways with Mexico. So it's not just LA Long Beach, but I also have 6 gateways with Mexico, moving product back and forth. So it is truly an international system, even though we are nationally based, but we focus on all this. So it is just an incredible system that we're tied to, both for foreign trade as well as for domestic movement of goods and products throughout the country. So that's what makes it exciting here, but there's also the population base, which is incredible, the diversity, which will, to me, as far as I'm concerned, is always a benefit and a plus in doing business in such a wonderful location. We have our challenges, all of us do, but at the same time, we look to respond to customers' needs. We've gone through crazy times before, we will go through crazy times again, not because we want to, because that's just the way the world works. But I do think everything that happened with COVID, et cetera, taught us a lot. So for us, it's resiliency, which was also coined by my fellow person at BNSF, Lena Kent, but it is resiliency because we have to be nimble to be able to respond if it's weather, if it's an earthquake, whatever is thrown our way. We have to be able to respond to that and deal with the issue at hand and do whatever we need to do to make sure that we can ensure product movement continues.
Thank you, Lupe. I want to stick with that, with resiliency, and I want to direct this to you and Noel. Something at the top of everyone's mind, obviously, is the state of world trade and trade disruption. Discuss the ripple effects through the system you just described that trade volumes, whether surges or drop in trade, have on ports and rail, and have on the broader system, that goods movement system that you described. And how are you defining that resiliency, supply chain resiliency?
I think the number one issue is working with our customers. That's number one. What do they need? What is troubling them, or how can we help them? People may not know, but Union Pacific has 12 unions in 23 states. I deal with, majority of my workforce is labor related. And so we have the ability to ramp up or ramp down, or furloughs, which includes I'm non-union. I've been furloughed before. Not a fun thing, but at the same time, it was what kept us going through very difficult times. So you have the ability to ramp up your labor force, bring it down. You don't like to do that very often, by the way. That is not the way you want to run your business. You want it pretty steady. But you have that ability, and that's worked into all of our contracts with our union leadership. And again, it responds to those situations, but it also responds to whatever's happening on the ground with our customers, whether they're in Mexico or whether they come in through the ports, or whether they're domestic trying to move loads of lumber. We're gonna have a huge rebuilding effort here in Southern California that has begun. And again, much of that stuff may come through a combination of trains and trucks to get here. Just think of the appliances needed. Just think of some of the things that you put in that house or in that garage that currently has to be redone and rebuilt for the future of both the Altadena area as well as the Palisades area. So that's something that we're going to be a part of on the domestic front as well.
Noel.
If the supply chain was not resilient before the pandemic-induced supply chain crisis, it became resilient. We learned how to make the supply chain resilient, and to the credit of our stakeholders, ILW dock workers showing up, masking up, showing up, and everyone up and down the supply chain showing up to keep that cargo moving. The ports of LA and Long Beach never shut down a single day during COVID. So that was a testament to our ability to flex our muscle and say we can be resilient even in the face of this global crisis, right? So here we are a few years removed. We thought we'd seen it all, and all of a sudden there's another disruption, but this time it's not triggered by a global pandemic. It's triggered by shifting trade policy and tariffs. And no matter what the source is, we as stakeholders in the supply chain and the system of systems are responsible for ensuring that the freight of our customers makes its voyage as reliably, efficiently, sustainably as possible. So when you think about what's been happening over the past 3 months, 4 months, we started noticing at the ports of LA Long Beach in late summer, early fall last year, that a lot of our customers, a lot of the shippers were beginning to advance orders, trying to get ahead of any changes in tariffs. They call it front loading. And for that reason, the Port of Long Beach, over the last 11 months, has experienced double-digit year-over-year increases for the past 11 months. So last year, that catapulted us to a record year in 2024, 9.6 million TEU. Between the Port of LA and Long Beach, we handled 19.6 million TEU. It's just a massive amount of cargo. And ask me, how much congestion, delays, or backlog did we have? 0. We handled more cargo in 2024 than we did in 2022, the last record, when the press was talking about the 109 ships at anchor, not enough garage capacity, trains not having enough equipment, right? And customers like Ron saying, where's my freight, right? Members of Congress calling us, where the heck is my constituents' parts so that they can manufacture things, right? So you see the big picture. So what is happening now? What goes up must what? Come down. So in the month of May, we're beginning to see the signs of the reverse. All that front loading has come to a screeching halt. For the month of May at the Port of Long Beach, we're estimating about a 30% drop in imports year over year for the same month. We've got a total of 14 blank sailings, which are basically ships that would have sailed to our port but were canceled. When you add that to the Port of LA, it's roughly twice that. So what does that mean for the supply chain? As Lupe said, it means that all of us have to come together and we have to pivot very, very quickly. Unfortunately, in the very near term, it means that our marine terminal operators are going to have to close gates. They're going to have to reduce the labor allocation. Unfortunately, it means that our truck drivers, who are used to pulling 4 or 5 containers a day, are now going to be reduced to 2 or 3, or maybe less. Unfortunately, it means train departures out of LA Long Beach may be constrained. Unfortunately, it means that our shippers are not going to have access to that flexibility. So you begin to see the ripple, but here's my greatest concern. When the cargo comes back, and it will, right? There was a big announcement this morning with the UK. Hopefully there's going to be a big announcement on next Monday coming out of Geneva in Switzerland. When that cargo comes back, I'm confident that the entire supply chain here, because we learned this during COVID, will come back together. And when the cargo comes roaring back, the garage capacity is going to be available. The trains and the system is going to be adequately staffed and resources. The ports are going to scale up. We're going to flex our gate hours. We're going to have the labor, and we'll be able to handle it.
Excellent overview. And Fran, I'm going to bring you and Ron in on this question because I thought the point about resilience and the connective tissue, and that is one of the enduring qualities of the trade and logistics system in Los Angeles, is the connection between all of us, the communication between all of us. So Ron and Fran, looking back at the lessons learned from COVID-19, which exposed a lot of vulnerabilities that Noel was talking about, and we're living through some of them again, what are some of the lessons learned that have improved trade and logistics in LA?
Well, hopefully we learned a lot. I think one of the high points for me during that whole journey, and we, all of us, we didn't know what kind of journey we were on, but something was going on that we're going to try to do the best. And what it did was really peel the onion back. And what we realized was, okay, you can close all the general retail stores, but what's going to happen then? Because for all of us to be effective, and the reason that we have such a foundation of the goods movement sector here, it works when we're all moving. Sometimes the speeds get out of alignment, equipment gets out of alignment. But I think for all of us, just that one shock to the system, it created gazillion problems. For resiliency, one of the benefits we all have is we all knew each other. We'd already been working together. We have the cleanest gateways in the nation. And so we already had everybody's cell phone number. You know, sometimes we're calling and complaining at them. But we had those relationships in place, and I think that allowed us. And we also, in the system of systems, no is not an answer for us. So how are we going to do it? And I'm going to give a shout out to David and his boss, Gene Soroka. During those days, they were actually making the antibacterial with going to Home Depots and getting the products and when we couldn't get it. And we knew that we had to keep going. We lived through, first step was make the dock workers all essential workers. We said, well, that's great, but we're all in this together. So then we need our rail partners and we need our warehouses. So I think in terms of resiliency, you see this ebb and flow. This is the biggest public-private partnership ever, in my opinion. If you look at those different components of everything from the consumer, the beneficial cargo owners, and the businesses, you know, it's the endocrine system. But if you think of the investments that are made, we have aligned, sometimes not so well, other times better, our railroad investments. Those are all, for the most part, private investments. Our 2 Class 1s are making. We have the gateway of the ports. We're a landlord port. Other jurisdictions are operating ports. We're a landlord ports. We're actually 2 ports, I like to say, divided by a piece of dental floss, but we do have 2 separate entities, and I think we're better. I mean, we're better because we have 2 Class 1 railroads. I think we're better because we have 2, Class 1 seaports.
2 NBA teams and 2
Two of
MLB
everything. We
teams.
like 2 of everything here, so it all works. You know, we've got a lot of real estate developers. And we have a lot of foresight, and we have the land to be able to do the size increases that the warehousing sector needed to grow. And we've been flexible. In my career in commercial real estate, we used to brag when I first started that all of our projects are rail served. Well, then the Staggers Act came along, and guess what? Our Class 1 rails became the carriers for the longer haul, and it was a trucking sector. And so we also have the largest trucking sector here. It is the one I stay up worrying about the most at night because it's fragile. It is fragmented, and it has an awful lot of rules and complexity, and God love our truckers who figure it all out. But I think the public-private partnership, and then the other thing for resiliency that we have, and we don't talk enough about this advantage that we have, it's our weather. You know, a lot of our competitors are dealing with stuff that we don't typically have to deal with. Not that we don't have urban wildflowers and earthquakes and stuff, but I think we have a competitive advantage when it comes to that. And I think because we have operating ports, we got folks that are competing. We've got a great longshoreman work staff here. And so I think just the complexity makes us stronger and just inherently. So yes, we have big garages. They're called warehouses.
Fantastic, Brandon. Before turning to Ron, I want to remind the audience, please formulate your questions, get them ready. And I believe Olivia is walking around with a mic, so if you do have a question, raise your hands and she will walk the mic over to you. Ron, resiliency.
All of my fellow panelists, they pretty much said the bulk of what needs to be said on this issue, but what I could say in regards to resiliency is that what I noticed, especially given the pandemic and coming out of that, is how interconnected and how critical Los Angeles is. If I remember my numbers correctly, I would say 40% of the goods come through Los Angeles, touching every state. So that means there's a ripple effect that what happens here, and then many times people think about shipping, they think about finished goods. Of course, there are those finished goods, those items that you can go into the store and buy that came from elsewhere, but there are also materials that are used to build certain things. And so that means developments that are going on in other places are impacted based on what's happening out west. Okay, I would get calls sometimes from a friend of mine, Chris Gutierrez, with KC Smartport in Kansas City about Edgerton and what's going on in Kansas City and the real estate boom there. They're building so much, but now they're worried about materials now and things of that sort. So what happens here really, really impacts what's going on in other places outside of Los Angeles. And Fran said something earlier about an industrial building, one of those garages, as you would say. Well, we feel so strongly about this region, because I know at the core this is Select LA, and Select LA we want to really put emphasis on why Los Angeles and this entire region is so important to this particular industry sector, or why it's so attractive for outside investors. We actually have our largest fulfillment center, we being Amazon, our largest fulfillment center, I want to say in the world, is in Ontario, and that's 4.5 million square feet. So it's a lot larger than the 2 million. So I want to get that extra 2.5 million.
As one big building. Wait, I was talking about 2 million in one building. Is that all in one building? Holy cow.
And along with that, like I said, I spoke about finished goods and things that are actually, that kind of impact every sector that we don't even think about. What also comes along with this is what really makes Los Angeles attractive, and that's the attraction of labor. Our labor pool is drawn here because of the opportunities that are here. The opportunities are here because of the magnitude of this economy. This state by itself is the 4th or 5th largest economy. If it were a country in the world, I can guarantee you that the logistics sector plays a huge role in us ranking as high as we rank, which is not something we should take for granted. That's why many of us are on the forefront of keeping this competitive advantage at the global level. What we've learned throughout history and throughout time is that people and capital, it's mobile, okay? So we can't take certain things for granted. So we have people like the people on stage, and many people within the audience that are on the front line of keeping Los Angeles at a competitive advantage for this specific industry sector.
Other thing, David, and I think we haven't acknowledged, is just the export market as well. And typically, California feeds the world. And so we also are part of that greater ecosystem. And, a lot of exports will go out of Oakland. It can be the second port of call. But I think for all of us to think, if you're going to look at investing in the goods movement sector, I think knowing that things are coming in and also going out is equally important, I think. And workforce, we have a robust workforce here. And I think for our tenant base, when they're looking, obviously location matters, population, consumption matters, but making sure that you have a robust workforce, I think, is another key to why you would select the SoCal region.
Before you move on, to kind of piggyback on this, automation and technology is a huge role that California is essentially, in many respects, sometimes the first place where things are tried, and if it works and if it's successful, then it's repeated somewhere else. Both good and bad on my part, because I see some sort of bills that could be somewhat anti-growth, then I'll see a copycat bill popping up somewhere in Oregon, and now I don't have to just worry about more gray hairs coming out of California. Now I have to get gray hairs coming out of Oregon and other places, but that's an entirely separate issue. But the point is this: is that this place being California, Southern California, we are typically at the forefront of innovation and technology. And even in this sector, with the goods movement and transportation ecosystem that we have here, the use of robotics to reduce, injury to workers and at the same time enhancing their productivity. Because I can say this, for 2024, and I'm sure that many of you can attest to this, we were able to ship 9 billion items in this area, 9 billion items on the same day or next day. That doesn't happen everywhere. One of the reasons we were able to do that was because of technology and innovation. 9 billion items either next day or same day. That's amazing. And we want to replicate that same sort of service globally. And when we want to do that, who do we look to say, okay, this is a template, this is how it's done, they've done it successfully? We look at Southern California.
I feel like I find at least half of that 9 billion on my porch on any given evening. So
I've got the other half, it's my wife's.
Just want to check the audience again for any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Olivia?
Yep. Thank you. No. Let me stand because I'm very short.
Hi, let me stand as I'm very short. Buenas tardes, buenos días, good morning, bonjour. I'm from Senegal, West Africa, okay? And I'm an Angelino too, since 20 years. I like Los Angeles. I work with 500,000 farmers in Cote d'Ivoire doing coffee and chocolate, the best coffee and chocolate in the world out there. Now, coffee is Ethiopian.
Do you have any wine?
Yes. I have all the paper. I can give you everything. And South Africa there. But what I want to ask is, whenever we export, in Africa, it's 55 countries, you're aware of that. They are exporting everything in the East Coast. I don't want to hear about New York or the port or whatever is in the East Coast. I want to bring them here in Los Angeles. Because we do business with Africa with Mayor Bass. Here is new. How can we facilitate the work, make it easier for those who are in Africa to bring their product here, and vice versa? That is a raw product, because we have all the raw product, you can say gold, metal, etc., you know it. And the finished product, because now they have finished product that we can sell directly in stores. Thank you.
Excellent question. I love chocolate and coffee. We would love to have more of your product here. And I can spend hours answering your question, but I'll give you the short version. The way that new supply chains are designed and developed, in many ways, comes down to matchmaking. Matching up the source, in your case, the growers of that coffee, producers of that chocolate, and matching that with the markets. And this is where that ecosystem becomes incredibly important. We've got the LA Chamber here, we've got BizFed, we've got a number of organizations that help promote the market here. Once we have established a demand for that product, then what we do is we go to the service providers. We go to the ocean carrier who transports the product. Then they in turn talk to the railroads and the other service providers along that supply chain relay that pushes that product from origin to destination. The reason why most of the product in Africa goes to the East Coast is because that's the shortest transit route. The reason that 90% of goods that are transported globally is on a ship is it's the cheapest and the most economical. And typically, that's the way these decisions are made, right? I would love to see more product from Africa. What that means for us is that it would have to transit the Panama Canal or go to an East Coast port through rail. But if you want to go port to port, it would have to transit the canal. So the voyage would be a little longer. That being said, if you do have those conversations with the ocean carrier and all the service providers, then that market, that demand is what it basically gets that domino going. But Ron, I'm sure you have something.
Yeah, well, and once you hear, that's step one. Salade. Once you hear, so Amazon, over 60% of the items sold on Amazon come from small and medium-sized businesses, and which is primarily small independent business. And so we will be more than happy to have your product in our marketplace that will expose you not just to the Los Angeles market, but across the globe, so to speak. So yeah, we're always open for new business. And I understand that there are supply chain issues, and I can speak to that because I'm not an expert on that specific component of the process. But yeah, but in regards to small business, that's something that we somewhat pride ourselves on. And as a matter of fact, going back just a little bit to the pandemic, there were so many small businesses that were still afloat and were able to stay in business because of Amazon. Because now when we had a shutdown, you guys remember where small stores, independent small sellers weren't able to get customers walking in off the sidewalk. They needed customers, and so we provided a platform for them to sell their products. And there were so many small businesses that were able to stay in business because they expanded on that. And now it's to a point where many small businesses are thriving because now they have the foot traffic coming in and they're able to sell on Amazon Marketplace. So.
Do you have any samples?
I will give you some.
Excellent. Wonderful answers. Any other questions from our audience with time remaining? Yes, ma'am.
So my name is Vivian Yang. I'm on the drone delegation from Taiwan. So my question is with respect to drones. And I understand Amazon is planning drone delivery testing in several locations. Is it under planning or any of your plans for the drone delivery to work with train delivery and truck deliveries?
I'll start with where we're using drones, because that's actually a very recent concept for us. We now employ folks, train folks for drone movement with inspection to our bridges, which has made this situation a lot safer. It used to take an individual to climb up all these bridges. We have about 5,000 bridges in 23 states. Some of them over waterways, some of them over places where it is not, you can't easily land and live. And so now we employ the use of drones for those inspections in addition to our individuals so they can see what's going on with our structures. Some of our structures are more than 50 years old. So, and as we replace these structures, we do look at the longevity of these structures, because that's where we use it. The second place now we're using drones, security. Many of you that have been in Southern California have seen some of the news on cargo theft, which is a huge challenge all over the country in the United States. And we are now employing those drones to secure some of our areas and be our eyes and ears in places where we can't always be. So that's a combination of that in terms of those are some of the things that we are definitely employing that we never employed before, not something that we had before.
In regards to the drone, that's something we work primarily with the FAA around, because this guy is not at the local jurisdiction, it's with the federal. And we're really excited about that program. And a lot of what we've been trying to do is that, like I said, about the speed of service to the customer, which is where we have our competitive advantage. The drone delivery is going to help that out, especially in rural areas. And that's really primarily what that part of the business has been, concentrated on, and also in instances where there could be, when it's applicable, to get services and items to places that have had issues with infrastructure being devastated because of natural disasters. For example, not the wildfires here, but for the fires that happen in Hawaii and things of this sort. And but really a lot of our innovation around drones right now, and we're really excited about the velocity of the improvements in the technologies in the drones to make it so that they're less noisy. So they're smaller, but they're still strong enough to carry a certain package of a certain size. There are a lot of limitations when it comes to drones. First and foremost, being secure and safe for the entire environment. So that's something that we're really looking forward to. That, along with AI, they kind of go hand in hand, because we're utilizing AI to help improve some of our devices like drones to help deliver safely and efficiently. And we're doing it essentially at a loss. I mean, I can't tell you right now, because I can't remember the number offhand, but I was really blown out the water of how in those places where drones are offered, drone delivery, let's say, because we're going to deliver one tube of toothpaste. If you want one tube of toothpaste, if that's all you want. In many cases, it costs us so much more to deliver that one tube of toothpaste than what you paid for the toothpaste in the first place. we're willing to eat that cost right now, just so we can continue to innovate and things of that sort. So that's really what I'm excited about when it comes to drones.
I hope we could help from
Yeah.
it's a combination of supply chain for drones. Quick question, what is the biggest you can carry right now for a drone delivery? The weight?
Okay, I'm not on the drone.
The question was, what is the largest that could be carried for drone delivery?
I'm not on the drone team, and but don't hold me to this. I don't think like it's less than 10 pounds. I believe it's less than 10 pounds. I'm almost certain it's less than 10 pounds.
Thank you.
True story, drones bring people together. I crashed my son's drone into my neighbor's rooftop and had to go retrieve it, so I got to meet my neighbor that way. First, I want to thank the organizers. We have so many other questions we could get to with this august panel. We're not going to get to them, unfortunately, as our window is ended. Want to appreciate the organizers and extend our thanks to the organizers for having us on this panel, and want to thank you for attending, and please join me in thanking our panelists.